Listen with me and my distinguished colleagues to His Excellency Mar Gregorios Yohanna Ibrahim, the Archbishop and Metropolitan of the Syrian Orthodox Church of Aleppo. Let me also, at this point, express my gratitude to the Episcopal Church at Princeton, who has been wonderful in hosting His Eminence with us. Archbishop Mar Gregorios holds degrees from St. Ephraim Theological Seminary in Saale, the Oriental Institute in Rome, and also the Pontifical Oriental Institute in Rome. But he has done his dissertation for a PhD at Birmingham University in the United Kingdom, from where he also has the PhD, and the title of the dissertation was Christian Arabs in Mesopotamia before Islam. The Archbishop held, previous to his nomination as Archbishop in 1979 in Syria, many positions elsewhere, namely in Iraq, Sweden, Holland, Belgium, and Lebanon. And he has been a member of key committees on many religious boards, most importantly on the Global Christian Forum, the Executive Committee of the Middle East Council of Churches, Pro Oriente, and the Central Committee of the World Council of Churches. He has acted as a representative of the Syrian Orthodox Church of Antiochia at international, regional, and local conferences since 1980. I can tell you from the various informations I have that His Eminence not only is perhaps one of the pivotal leaders in the Syrian Orthodox Church, but really considered one of the key clerical leaders in his part of the world. Because of this, he was asked most recently to assist in the preparation of the papal visit to the Lebanon in September now, to which then at the end he couldn't go because by leaving Aleppo, his convoy got under fire and they had to extract him and bring him back. And he also attended the G8 Religious Leaders Summit in Bordeaux and the UN Alliance of Civilizations in Doha. The way how His Eminence and I have met was on our first major Liechtenstein colloquium in Triesenberg, Principality of Liechtenstein, on Syria and the macro region this April, where His Eminence became key in negotiating not only about Syria, but also with its neighbors Israel and other key states there. When he was with us at that time, his key phrase was, "I'm concerned, but I'm not afraid." When His Grace was with me in June this summer in order to visit authorities in Washington and within the United Nations, his tone was different. He said, "I'm concerned and I'm afraid." And what he told me and us on many of our previous meetings already, recently now, was, "I'm worried, concerned, and afraid for Syria, for the Syrians, and for the region as general." He is now very much working on a roadmap for Syria's future. On today, we perhaps, hopefully, received a glimpse of light in the preliminary announcement of a serious attempt by Lakhdar Brahimi, the negotiator and mediator and envoy of the United Nations and the Arab League, of a potential ceasefire for a couple of hours or days because of the big festivity of the Eid, beginning the day after tomorrow. Let me now invite you to listen to His Eminence in the spirit of Princeton, in the service of all nations, and in a non-polemic and constructive and respectful discourse on these August academic rounds with some ideas, thoughts, and considerations for a potential way forward for Syria and the Syrians. Let me welcome with you His Eminence, the Archbishop.
Dear friends, I am not a politician. I am an archbishop. Therefore, I came with my full ecclesiastical uniform to show you that I am here on behalf of the religious people in Syria to say a word about what's happening today in Syria. I know it's very dramatic, very sad, but still, as men and women of faith, we have to try all the time to do something for the benefit of our countries. Since mid-March 2011, my country, Syria, which is known to the world for its rich history, culture, healthy spirituality, and plurality, and exemplary coexistence, is experiencing today unprecedented chaos. It all began with a peaceful protest movement and gradually escalated into multi-layered violence. The vulnerable majority has been devastated. A long-standing and unacceptable malpractices by some Syrian officials began in the 1980s. These unchecked malpractices led to widespread corruption, which gradually spread and infested many departments of the state. Naturally, it caused deep anxiety among Syrian citizens. The yoke of president corruption generated discreet popular foment, which eventually triggered the protest movement. The first spark was in reaction to arbitrary decisions taken by some security services. Syrian citizens thought a new wave of repression was dominating the thoughts and actions of some security services. The waves of changes were depicted as an Arab Spring, which had a domino effect that swept through Tunisia, Egypt, Libya, and Yemen. Syrians felt the breeze of the relative successes of those waves of changes. They thought the Arab Spring could be an effective tool to eradicate corruption, the plug of their society, hence the popular demonstrations. The first spark was ignited at Dar'a, a town on the Jordanian border, leading to restlessness in cities in mainland Syria, then moved to the coastal cities. The major outbreak of violence began in Hama, a city which had experienced uprisings and ugly unrest in the 1980s. Soon, the unrest moved to the ancient city of Homs, in the heart of Syria. Here, murder on identity, assassinations, kidnappings, vandalizing, looting, and setting on fire governmental buildings and public utility installations were the order of the day. This violence and upheaval shattered the demographic fabric of the city and its ancient coexistence. Religious ferment and forced displacements uprooted peaceful residents of the city. Homs became a ghost town. Many quarters were deserted and all into ruins, and fell into ruins. Inside those quarters, many religious houses of worship were ruined, especially 7 old Christian churches. Thousands became homeless, many of whom are the urgent and desperate need of medical treatment and humanitarian relief, which are still in short supply. After the 20th of July, other cities in Syria were attacked, such as Aleppo, my city where I come from, where we spent, and we are still spending, days and nights worried about the uncertain future of the population. The protest movement created a state of anomaly in the Syrian society. A plethora of spine-chilling scenarios started to be discussed openly in different political discourses, including 1. Civil war of sectarian dimensions among people of one harmonious nation who belong to different religions, ethnicities, cultures, and languages. They have lived for generations in one homeland called Syria. Second, UAE sanctions imposing crippling international sanctions under the auspices of the UN, which harm the people more than the regime. Third, military intervention under the Security Council cover an attempt to put an end to the chaos and turmoil which prevail in Syria today. Fourth and last, breakup of the state, a nightmarish scenario which threatens the existence of the state by fragmenting it into many tiny entities. The different sectors of the Syrian society, which comprise Christians, Muslims, Arabs, and Kurds, who once coexist in a pluralistic society, shared its resources and worked for the country's progress and prosperity. They will be compartmentalized along their religious, ethnic, cultural, and linguistic lines. Furthermore, no one denies that this upheaval is the result of people's ideas, perceptions, and visions in accordance with their varied allegiances. However, all agree to maintain in a united Syria as a homeland for all. Furthermore, a universal common popular vision is the expansion of the margin of freedom and the enrichment of pluralistic cultures, religions, sects, and creeds. They seek to enhance freedom of belief, choice, gain greater dignity, and establish the concept of citizenship. They demand more social justice, the rule of law, civil society, unity, and coexistence. They have agreed to work together and stand against those who want to propagate chaos and anarchy, which undermine the bond of the national fabric and destroy the concept of national unity. Is there a solution to spare Syria further bloodshed? So far, the Syrian society has suffered in excess of 80,000 martyrs, including victims of the massacre of July 18, 2012. Clearly, no one is safe or immune from the spiraling violence. It is possible that the solution in this socio-political crisis can come simultaneously from inside and outside Syria. A solution mutually accepted to all factions, a solution which could prove tenable, plausible, and effective in addressing the root causes of the protest movement, activate the role of law, de-escalate the state of anxiety, and bring about security, safety, and stability. So far, the most important endeavors to reestablish peace and stability in Syria was the international initiative of Mr. Kofi Annan, today carried by his successor, Al-Akhdar Ibrahim. It has not yet attained the desirable level of success. We believe that this initiative requires the implementation of the following. First, to bring about a lasting ceasefire, and this is a very important issue, to bring about a lasting ceasefire between the warring parties in Syria and establish security and normality to the daily living of Syrians. Second, the needed humanitarian aid must be allowed to enter freely and swiftly, especially in areas that are currently beyond the reach of international aid organizations and agencies. The Red Cross and Red Crescent should be allowed to provide the desperately needed humanitarian assistance and relief for all those in need and in all areas. The scope of humanitarian need is vast. Third, repatriate all displaced citizens who suffered forced internal and external immigration. Fourth and last, the warring factions must be brought to the negotiation table. Such negotiations should involve the entire Syrian spectrum. Representatives of the opposition, both in and out of Syria, should be included. The main aim of such negotiations is to free Syria from the cultures of evil which is strangling the Syrian society. Hopefully, successful negotiations could lead to a new formula to secure the return of peace and stability to Syria. It may be a national council at home with full representation of the full spectrum of the Syrian mosaic. Such a council will lead Syria to the next phase. The success of such an important national initiative of reconciliation will hopefully bring accord among belligerent factions in Syria. Such a national council should be charged with following priorities. One, development of constitutional principles to ensure equal rights for all citizens. Second, formulation of future Syria internal and external policies. Third, address the undesirable outcomes of the crisis, such as the divisions of the army and restoration of its unity. Fourth, establish a code of conduct for the Syrian security services to ensure that mistakes of the past will not be repeated. Fifth and last, most important of all, is the restoration of confidence and mutual respect among all citizens. The National Council should be accountable to a national unity government that embraces all parties, including the opposition, both inside and outside Syria. The most important tasks of this government should be to, first, ensure free and fair elections for the new parliament. Second, establish a professional commission able to develop a modern and permanent constitution to ensure the elimination of the concept of hegemony of individuals, political or religious parties, a norm experienced in many Arab countries. Third, establish a new law of parties to regulate their participation in the political life of the new Syria. Fourth and last, arrange for the election of a new president and the new constitution, a leader who can uphold the interest of Syria and return it to safe, secure, stable, peaceful, and democratic state. My dear friends, after this roadmap, there were so many efforts here and there with many concerns of the future of Syria. I can just remind you of two important meetings. One was in, as it was mentioned by my dear friend and brother, Dr. Wolfgang, whom I have to thank him and thank the Liechtenstein Institute on Self-Determination. The meeting in Liechtenstein in April this year was an important action for everybody who knew already what was going on through our discussions. Now, the message which was given through this meeting was that the current state of conflict, its escalations, and increasing involvement of the neighborhood is putting the Syrian people and the security and stability of the neighborhood and macro region at serious risk. So everybody thinks about Syria and how they can solve the problem. Another important meeting was led by the Religions for Peace in Cyprus, and that was something very important because the religious leaders who were from the Islamic and Christian communities, we thought that this mandate and this letter should be sent to everybody, but especially to the Syrian government. And it was said in the statement, our faith in the Lord inspires us to support the quest for a peaceful solution, mainly based on national dialogue and the rejection of all forms of violence, regardless of its sources. Reject the use of military and security measures by all parties after they proved inefficient and exacerbated the problem. Call upon the authorities to the immediate release of prisoners of opinion to respect human dignity. And then it was mentioned in a very clear way the role of the Christians and Muslims who are historical components of the Syrian social fabric that should be preserved to guarantee the future prosperity and coexistence in this country. Values of justice, freedom, dignity, and equality are the basis of citizenship. Citizenship is not a grant, but a right for every Syrian citizen. Well, I am here, as you see, and I feel that I am not defending anybody. I am defending only one thing, which is Syria. Syria of all Syrians, Muslims and Christians. I will never say that what happened in Syria was not wrong. It was wrong, and the sources are very clear. I would not like to mention them, but we condemn all those sources who were behind this violence in Syria. The challenges are so great. We are expecting something new before the end of this year. We know that the future of Syria is in the hands of the Syrians, first of all, then maybe the neighboring countries, then other countries like USA. Our aim is how to establish a concrete plan how to live together, because we need coexistence to be continued in our life. And also, we feel that the role of the religious leaders is very important, because the sermons and the mosques and churches are very important. They can direct people to different directions, but we would like to have it in a very positive way. How we see the future of Syria, I think we believe that we should first of all know what are behind all these problematic situations. Is it only from inside Syria? Is it a sectarian conflict? Is it between the regime and some people? Or is it from outside? Is it a war between Shiites and Sunnites in the area? Or it's more than that, but we in Syria believe that there is one important key in the world who can do something for Syria and stop this problematic situation, and this is the key of USA, because we believe that the Americans and the government of America could do many things for the peace and tranquility and stability in Syria. I don't think that we have to talk about the chemical weapons or about the concerns of other countries like Turkey, Saudi Arabia, and Qatar. This is not my mandate to say something about it, but I have, at the end, a plea, and this is for you, for everybody here in USA, an appeal from all honest and noble citizens of Syria to peace lovers everywhere, and especially in our gathering here in Princeton, to help stop the bloodshed in Syria. And this is something very important for us. If there is no ceasefire, we cannot proceed. So to stop the bloodshed in Syria and to be part of bringing peace, prosperity, dignity, and comfort of the country and its people. Thank you very much.
Thank you. His Eminence has obviously accepted to go into a Q&A, question and answer. So
Yeah, okay.
I would like to invite you to, if you wish to offer questions or very brief comments, but in the spirit of this academic environment and with the appropriate respect. Please, the floor is yours.
Go ahead. There you go. Oh. Thank you, Your Eminence, for coming. I was just wondering if you could give us a better sense of what the situation is like in Aleppo, since
Could you
that.
identify yourself?
Oh, I'm Andrew Yohanna. I'm a freshman at this school, and I was wondering if you could give us a sense of what the situation is like on the ground in Aleppo, considering that it's the city you're from.
Well, I didn't like to say many things about Aleppo because I think the media has said a lot. It's a ghost city today. We feel, the Aleppians, that we are in a prison, big prison. We cannot go out, and we have the lack of electricity, of water, of food. Everything is closed, schools, churches, mosques, shops, bazaar. It's a dead city. And then we cannot sleep because the bombs are coming from here and there. And this is one thing which we didn't experience in our current history. So we believe that this situation will have a very bad and negative impact, especially on our students. You know, now we were preparing ourselves to open our schools. In my case, there was a bomb on one of my schools. I have 3 related schools to my church, and we couldn't bring students because they cannot come, because buses cannot bring them from their houses, because teachers are afraid, and everybody is afraid, and we don't know how to proceed. So Aleppo is suffering a lot today, and I think that will bring something very bad in the history of Aleppo, the current history of Aleppo, because at the end we have to know that Aleppo is the second important city in Syria. But when you have a city like Aleppo dead, what can you imagine from it?
Yes, please.
Yeah, can you?
Would you please come to the microphone, madam?
I have just 2 brief questions. One, can you comment on what the relationship was between the Syrian Orthodox Church and the Assad regime prior to these developments? And also, do you have concerns about the status of the Syrian Orthodox Church if radical Islamic elements become predominant?
Thank you for your question. I think you cannot separate the Syrian Orthodox Church or community from other Christian communities. To be frank, before March 2011, not only me, not only the Christian leaders, everybody in Syria used to have this kind of praising the regime and praising the president. But this was part of our tradition. At that time, nobody was daring to say something else. Therefore, if you go to the history of the Christian communities and the relations between them and the regime, you will find that many of the leaders, including me, we were praising the regime of Hafez al-Assad and his son Bashar al-Assad. And that's very clear. You can see it on the internet, and we don't deny it. But after March 2011, it happened that we couldn't believe that in Syria, the bloodshed will change everything in the life of the people. Now, before that date, March 2011, any piece of information was included with very nice words towards the regime and the president. And it was, as I said, a tradition to mention his name, the name of the president. Nowadays, you don't find that. There is another language. Now, we speak about stability, security, prosperity, dignity, and then we say, we are with Syria, we are for Syria, without mentioning neither the military, nor the regime, nor the president, because we believe that there is something wrong in the society. So I think some people want to condemn us on our attitudes before March 2011, and this is not right. They should know what's the attitude today. It's very clear that we are not for killing people. We are not for destroying cities. We are not for closing shops, etc. We are for more than that. We are for Syria. Syria, which was before March 2011. Now, the relations with the Muslims, I can tell you that until now remain as they were in the past. We are proud of our relations with the Muslims. Now, there is one problem, that some people believe that the relations were only on a top level. I mean, between the leaders, church leaders, and religious Muslim leaders. This is not true. Of course, I am one of the friends of the Grand Mufti and other Muftis in Aleppo and outside of Aleppo. This is very clear. They have their own views today towards the regime, and I have my own. But it doesn't mean that we have to break the relations between ourselves. Because at the end, as I said it very clearly, that at the end we have one podium. We have to be very clear on that. How we can direct our people, Muslims and Christians, through the sermon, the religious sermon. And this is what we do it now. I know that there are differences among ourselves, but still we believe that the coexistence, the relations with the Muslims should remain, because at the end we would like to live together. We would like to be in a country where everybody is accommodated according to the traditions and teachings of our country. Is that okay?
Could you identify yourself?
My name is George Kiraz. I'm the director of the Syriac Institute. After the Great War, there was a bishop of Syria who was probably wearing the same attire you're wearing now, and who attended the Lausanne conference.
Passed away.
And he passed away, of course, a long time ago. It was Afram Barsoum, and in that meeting, not only he championed the needs of his own church, but also of Syria in general and of the Arab world in general, that the other Arab and Muslim representatives kind of championed him and called him the bishop of all Arabism. Now, in the current situation in Syria, how do you see the role of the Christians, not only as a community, but also their leadership? What is the role of their leadership in forming the new Syria, whatever that may be?
Thank you, George. I think this is a good question, because we are always facing a problem of what's the attitude of the Christians towards the regime and towards the future of Syria. Now, among the Christians, of course, you will find the majority silent people, the majority silent individuals or groups. And then the rest, they are divided. We have some pro-regime, we have some anti-regime. And even we have more than that. We have maybe 500, 600 those who are called today in Syria Shabiha, who are very much pro the regime, and they carry guns and weapons and they defend the regime, etc. But that's very clear, because you cannot have a unanimous thought for all the Christians. We come from different backgrounds. We come from different educational backgrounds. So you see those who are educated in one side, those who are not educated on the other side, those who were part of the Ba'ath Party still are very, very much faithful to that party, etc. But if you come to the church leaders, I think today there is a division between themselves. We have those who are very much defending the regime, and they are traveling here and there and saying many things, praising the regime and the president. And we have those, as I said, they changed their language. They changed their language because they believe that it's not right to praise only without having the chance and the space to criticize. So the Christian community is divided. The majority, as I said, silent, keeping silent. And then the rest, some are pro and some are anti.
Any of my students? Yes, please. Yes. So you're not one of my students. Could you identify yourself?
You have to come here, I think.
You mentioned the United States several times, but I didn't hear anything specific that you think the United States can do, should do, in regard to the situation in Syria. Second question is, while you're here in the United States, will you be meeting with anyone from the United States government?
I think for the second question, I will ask Professor Wolfgang to say a word. But for the first one, yes, we have this feeling that the main key of the solution of Syria is in the hands of the United States. I say that because we know what are the relations between Saudi Arabia, Qatar, and Turkey, and the United States. So if they come to any agreement among themselves, those four countries, and then, of course, the European countries also are supporting the USA. So I think we are expecting something very important from the USA, and they can do whatever they do. I mean, it's not only to have slogans and make meetings and speeches. No, not that. I think we need something practice to be done in Syria. For the second question, Professor?
Well, obviously the question is well placed because, as you may imagine, His Eminence does not go through all the duress to which he did in order to be even able to come out and then to observe a gorgeous fall in Princeton. What we perhaps forget is that in addition to everything he said about Aleppo, and I applaud the question from our young colleague here, this is a society which has now no food, no water, no electricity, no jobs, no offices are working, while it's under constant combat conditions, and while slowly but surely, anybody who can leaves. So you have what I experienced in the Balkans and in certain circumstances in Afghanistan, and what we called a pressure cooker mentality. You can't really go out of the house to get food or to get water, and you're injured and sick if they survive, have absolutely no medication. And you are under constant combat conditions. I don't know how many of you have ever heard a mortar grenade or an artillery grenade or a bomb falling. So kids, children, young ones, students who have no kindergarten, who have no school, who have no university, they are trapped. Their parents are trapped. There is no food. And for those who are injured, there is absolutely no medical service and no medication. So you have people lingering around yourself, people screaming and yelling till they fall into coma under exhaustion. Or you have makeshift medical facilities. You know what the highest remedy is in Syria and any of these communities which are under combat? Amputation. You have a huge degree of many times totally unnecessary amputation because that seems to be the only remedy to stop something. The international community has not learned because the longer this goes on, the deeper the grievance, the more difficult it becomes, A, to stop the fighting, because you have a constant influx of arms, money, ammunition. I have seen myself, 12-year-olds, firing a Kalashnikov where the Kalashnikov was bigger than the 12-year-old. But he still fired, wherever he did. So, number one, in my studies of crisis diplomacy, we have something which we call the pain factor. As long as we all, the international community, perceives the pain. But who reads about Syria right now? Where is Syria? You have all these unbelievable civilian dramas. We have elections, we have our own economic problems, we have unemployment, we have other problems. Europe has financial problems, as some people call it. Europe might all become Greece, and we don't want to become Greece. We have other problems. We have Afghanistan, we had Iraq, and most importantly, the international community, especially the United States, had Libya, Benghazi. And that leads to the other problem. The real problem of Syria is not just those who fight in Syria, those who shell Homs, Aleppo, Damascus. The real problem is, welcome all of you who are interested in diplomacy to old 19th century great power politics. The real problem is that there is a key power who has vested interest in Syria. That's Russia. And there is another key power who has vested interest in Syria. That is, yes, Turkey. And then you have Saudi interest, Qatari interest, and other regional interests. And Syria and the Syrians will so long suffer till perhaps the region becomes destabilized, till we have yet another bomb in Beirut, in Lebanon, which borders on Syria. Or we have a serious other problem in Jordan, which happens to border on Syria. Or we have another hundreds of thousands of refugees which cover Turkey, Iraq. And I haven't mentioned a key neighbor of Syria. I was myself twice on Golan, Israel. So it seems that while you have these fightings of various groups, you do not have a unified Syrian force on each side, because the opposition, Free Syrian Army, however they are called, they are split amongst themselves. They fight under duress amongst themselves. It seems that this might go on till the region becomes so destabilized that the international community really feels that there is an urgent need to intervene. But, but if you take everything I said before about the civilians, I haven't mentioned the climate change. And we are now approaching winter. We are approaching a very destable weather condition where the suffering of the civilians increases. So His Eminence is here to talk to any and all from the United States, defense, state, and others, the NSC, but also to talk to members of the United Nations and the United Nations Security Council. But the issue is you all. This is really an issue of enhancing public awareness, that while we discuss here and while we enjoy the fall here, you have on a daily basis between 80 to 200 dead per day. Just figure this, what it would have meant if this would have been in Iraq or Afghanistan. And we have in sum, presumably now, more than 300,000 injured, and certainly more than the announced 30 to 40,000 dead.
Yes.
Do you have another message? Any other question?
No.
Well, then I wanted to ask you a question.
Okay.
The relationship between Syria and Israel. Between Syria and Israel. Because I know there are many here who are concerned about the relationship between Syria and Iran, which does affect.
Yeah, well, I think it's very obvious, very clear that during the 36 years, there was no agreement on ceasefire between Israel and Syria, but there was an understanding. Therefore, both countries were so happy that nothing happened between these two countries, and I think they were in their way to have a real agreement for having a real peace between the two countries. But due to the circumstances in Syria, I think nobody is ready today to negotiate as other countries did, like Egypt. But I think that will come because now everybody is keen to see that stability is not only in Syria, not only in Israel, it should be in the whole region, because the whole region suffered a lot for many decades, since the 40s of last century until now, and we are facing different kinds of wars here and there. And I think enough is enough, and we have to also maintain our freedom and our dignity and feel that we can live in peace. Because when you don't have peace, you don't have stability, you cannot proceed also. So I believe that the people of both countries are today, more than any time in the past, ready to see concrete and constructive negotiation between two countries. And it happened that something was done before the two countries, but I don't know what happened for the changes at that time. But this is an indication that the will is there, and it might come. I don't know when, but this is our feeling that peace should be established between Israel and other Arab countries, and among those Arab countries, Syria also.
Yes, please. Professor Christensen.
My name is Tom Christensen. I teach in the Wilson School. Thank you for coming, Your Eminence. My question has to do with American policy, and I'd like to get your opinion about aspects of American policy. It's a bit puzzling to me that the UN is pushing for ceasefire agreements, peace between the warring parties, and the U.S. is also asking for that as an outcome. But we have prefaced our engagement on Syria with the demand that the president step down. President Obama has said this, Secretary Clinton has said this. The president must go, but we also need a peace treaty. We also need a negotiation. Following Libya, where the initial impulse was to protect Benghazi and to get peace in Benghazi, and the outcome was the fall of Colonel Gaddafi, with the preface that the American position at the beginning was Colonel Gaddafi needed to go. Does this increase the likelihood, in your opinion, of a lasting peace, that demand? Is it worth it to negotiate with the regime that's in power to get a lasting peace? If not, do you see any realistic prospect that the existing regime will, in effect, negotiate its own demise? And is the situation that Professor Dansbeck-Gruber laid out in such vivid fashion dire enough that compromises need to be made with the existing regime to get a peace treaty and a ceasefire? Thank you very much. These are not easy questions. I don't have answers myself. You're wiser than I. I'm not suggesting there is an answer.
Well, not easy questions, but not easy answers. You tackle two different issues. One is the demand that President Bashar should step down. I don't know whether this is logic, that the demand comes from Qatar, from Saudi Arabia, from Turkey, from the United States, etc., and not from inside of Syria. Of course, we have also this feeling that such a regime cannot continue to control the country. But the problem is the procedure how to step down. If it is by violence, I think that will not come. If it is by violence, if you will ask the president by force to leave his position and go anywhere, I don't know, I think that will not come. But if it is through negotiation, especially if you come to the UN and then secure the concept of agreement between the Russians and the Americans and Chinese and the Iranians, and I mention these 4 countries because they are involved in this matter, I think there is a way to convince the Syrian regime or the Syrian president that he should step down, and then something else should come. Now, the problem is we always speak about how the president steps down, and then we don't know what after. What's after? Is it to leave it open? You know, in Syria also, the people have this fear of the future. If we don't know exactly who is going to come and replace the president and this regime. Anyhow, in June, when I was here, and Professor can witness that, we heard it from a very prominent, important political persons here, that USA is for 3 elements to remain in Syria. And they said it very clearly: the regime, the military, and the Ba'ath Party. So if this is true, you have to mobilize yourself how to separate between the president and the regime, the family and the community, etc. In that way, I think there is a solution. But if the president is supported by the Russians and they will not allow anybody to interfere, etc., so the president can continue his mission as he is. So this is very, very complicated matter. I think it's not the question that the president himself should agree on to continue or not.
Let me, first of all, Professor Christensen, I am grateful to the key question you have asked. Secondly, let me introduce you to a little piece of experience of international diplomatic history. For a leader to get off power, there are only limited options: voluntary step down or involuntary step down, or accidental death. I myself, and some of us here, may still well remember the crisis in Kosovo. Should I recall to you the expression of Sir Michael Rose, General Sir Michael Rose, outside Pristina airport saying to the United States commander, "Sir, I'm not declaring World War III because of Pristina airport." How did then President Slobodan Milosevic resign or give up? And how did we avoid a ground operation, although at that time John Major prepared it? The president and vice president of Yugoslavia, the president's wife and the vice president's wife, received each an envelope. And in that envelope was a secret indictment by the International Criminal Tribunal of Yugoslavia. And at that point, Slobodan Milosevic and Vice President Milutinovic knew that they will never be able to leave Yugoslavia anymore. As many of you might know, this great house, the Wood-Wilson School and my great institute, have been for many years the host of the International Criminal Court's special working group on the crime of aggression. We just finished a publication today, another one, on the International Criminal Court. I firmly believe, on the record and for the record, that at this point in time, the International Criminal Court should get involved, that the United Nations Security Council should refer the matter of Syria, of any person who has committed one of the 4 defining crimes: crimes against humanity, war crimes, genocide, or the crime of aggression, to the International Criminal Court. The General Assembly of the United Nations should approve so. And any person, any leader person from either the opposition or the reigning administration should be held accountable. By that time, we have a level playing field. We do precisely what His Eminence has proposed. We stop the killing at once. And I can tell you the power of indictments by the ICC is eminent and is quite important. And that would make it much easier for the United States of America and for the other 145 ratifying states of the ICC to bring in peace. I know for a fact that Russia and that many of the other key powers are not, as in diplomatic parlance, wedded to the current president. It's clear we have to stop the killing. We have to bring in ceasefire. We have to bring in humanitarian operations at once. And you have to begin a lasting and serious negotiation process. And I do believe that the ICC would offer a third possibility there.
Anyhow, this is a proposal.
We hope so. A Princeton proposal. Okay, with this, let me thank His Eminence for coming to us here. Let me thank you for your interest. And let me, especially to my young colleagues here, to our students, let me convey that this is a crisis which will last for years. Several have told us decades. The longer it lasts, the more suffering it has. It will affect one of the pivotal, strategic, historic regions of the world in matters we don't want it to affect. And it is on people like you yourself to carry the peace and to carry the message from Princeton, as you did the message from Syria to Princeton. And for this, thank you very much. We are going to have a reception.